So the Humane Society was looking for someone that could take it through a capital campaign and modernize the operations of the shelter. And we knew that the shelter was old. It had been built in the late 50s and then a renovation in the late 90s, but it was still outdated. Our kennels were old chain link fences. They were small. They were hard to clean.
Yeah, I mean, to see the difference in the shelter from 5 years ago to today, besides the physical structure, the people and their goal is to get every animal adopted. We don't put an animal down just because we're full.
So we have really developed a strong leadership team. We believe in putting the right people in the right positions. And so that has allowed us just to maximize what we can do as an organization for the community that we serve.
The amount of services they're going to be able to provide to the community are going to be far more extensive than what they were able to offer before. And why that's important is because, we want to be able to be involved in the community. We want to be able to invest in the community as the community has been investing in the Humane Society. In order to do that, one of the ways we can do that is to provide high quality veterinarian care, which is not something that most shelters can even think of doing.
So the Humane Society was founded in Lehigh Valley in 1906. It was primarily just a shelter for homeless dogs, and then became a shelter for cats as well. And then in the 1950s, they built a location on Dixon Street, which is the same location that we're in right now. With old chain link fences, cramped quarters for animals. But a lot of thought about animal welfare has changed in the last 20 years, and we didn't change with it. So we want to get on the front end of that wave again. And so what we've done is bring in a lot of cutting edge programs, a lot of new thinking to animal welfare.
So the Lehigh County Humane Society offers affordable veterinary services to the community that we serve. We currently offer affordable dog training services, individual and group sessions. Our dog training program also supports any of the animals that are adopted from us should an issue arise after they leave the shelter through evaluations. We provide return to owner services for stray animals that are picked up in the community. We provide animal control services to 6 municipalities in the area. We're picking up stray animals pretty much every day. Not all animals are truly strays. Some animals are owned and they just found themselves lost. Maybe someone left the door open, or they opened the door themselves or the gate and they got out, and they do have owners that are looking to find them and reclaim them. And so we provide those services.
Well, first of all, it is a no-kill shelter. We see animals come in here. All animals are accepted when they come in here. Doesn't matter what kind of dog it is, they're accepted here. And they do whatever they can for any animal that's here to try to get them all back to health, to get them to be adopted again and find their forever home. Where in many years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case. If the place was full, they put them down. That's not what they're doing anymore. That's the biggest thing for us to see that, which is why we're here and why we continue to volunteer, because that's what we believe in as well. To see an animal get a second chance, and it doesn't matter if it's a puppy or an older dog, we see them get second chances. And that part, years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. If the place was full, well, they made room, and that's sadly the way it was. Not anymore. That is not what LCHS is today, and that's why we've been here 5 and 7 years, and we donate our time and some of our resources to the shelter, and we encourage people to do the same.
Our head dog trainer, Lucas, comes up with these individualized training programs, and he uses his knowledge and expertise to specify what training needs to happen for each dog. And we actually can look at that training plan. It's literally written down. And then the trainers and the lead dog team, we take a look at it, and we're actually able to go through and implement all of those. So if we have a dog that we know doesn't walk as well on a leash, that's the thing we can focus on. If we know a dog does really well with training and treats, then we can focus on that as well. So every time we take a dog out, we're focusing on the specific training that each of these dogs need that's unique to them, that will allow them to better flourish and be better enriched on their walks and have the trainings be more effective so that ultimately they can be adopted to their forever homes. That training program is pretty significant. That's not something a lot of shelters do in general. And this training program, headed by our lead dog trainer, Lucas, is really central to getting these dogs in a position where they can be adopted and ready for their forever homes. And what we do is we get those training programs and we have those volunteers working with them. And all of the volunteers are working with the same program so that these dogs get the same consistency and the same enrichment to get them adopted.
So as a good nonprofit, we listen to our community. So we talk to the people out there in the public, who tell us what they need us to be. And so as a responsive nonprofit, we respond to the community needs and then build what we need to do in order to serve our community better. We knew that the shelter was old. It had been built in the late 50s and then a renovation in the late 90s, but it was still outdated. Our kennels were old chain link fences. They were small. They were hard to clean. Our cat areas were cramped, and some of our practices were outdated. And so what we wanted to do is kind of bring a cutting edge philosophy to animal welfare. And so we were able to look at it with some new eyes and with some fresh perspective, and bring in some new policies and procedures to move the organization forward.
We just didn't offer them. So 5-10 years ago, we didn't have a veterinary clinic. We were relying on private practice vets. We didn't have a dog training program. And unfortunately, that was desperately needed because 5-10 years ago, we were still getting in many dogs that lacked basic training, came from bad situations. We did not have 2 full-time adoption specialists, so we weren't as aggressively adopting out animals as we are now. And we didn't have as focused of a team that was trained to handle their specific area of the operation. So we just weren't functioning at the level that we are today 5-10 years ago, which I don't think at that time was unique to us. There were shelters across the country that were dealing with the same thing because animal welfare really does progress very quickly.
One of the things that the old system had and that we're working to change is these old kennel setups. And why it's so important that we change them is a lot of the times in the old kennels, it just didn't allow the dog to flourish in the way that it needs to. You can think about it. I tell the new volunteers this, is that if you were really hungry and 10 feet away from you was a delicious smelling pizza and you could smell it and you could see people going up and trying to take a bite of it, but you couldn't get it, it would make you more and more hungry. And that's somewhat similar to what these dogs have to deal with in the old kennels. Dogs are very scent-oriented. They're very sociable. They need to be able to go up to the thing that they want to investigate in order to do that. And they just can't in those kennels. They can see it and they can hear all the noises, but they're being prohibited from going up to it. So for them, it can get them really excited, get them a little maybe too excited, and sometimes they develop bad habits because of that. So this new kennel system is going to really improve how the dogs are in the kennels.
Some of the things that are vastly different now from 5 to 10 years ago would be the structure of the leadership team at the Lehigh County Humane Society. We have a development team, which we didn't have 5 or 10 years ago. We have great leadership in our current CEO. Again, we didn't have 5-10 years ago. We have a facilities manager who is in charge of keeping the facility in good repair and repairing anything that may need it. We have 2 full-time adoption specialists who work, full-time every week to get the animals adopted out that come into our shelter. We have a customer service manager, which has been big for us because we've been able to provide excellent customer service to our community. We have a certified dog trainer that allows us to be able to better rehabilitate the dogs that come into us and also provide those services at affordable cost to the community. We have a veterinary clinic that we didn't have 5 or 10 years ago with a clinic manager who is able to provide affordable services and financial aid if it's needed to members of our community that allow them to keep their pets in their home rather than surrendering them to the shelter.
Yeah, I mean, to see the difference in the shelter from 5 years ago to today, besides the physical structure, the people and their goal is to get every animal adopted. We don't put an animal down just because we're full. The difference, though, is the whole attitude is about saving the animals and doing more for the community than 10 years ago. That may not have been the case. The resources may not have been there. But for me, the leadership was different. Hal and Tisha have done a great job in changing that and pointing that direction so that we do more to get an animal adopted than ever before.
And they do cooperate now, whereas before they didn't with other shelters, other rescues. We had a cat some years ago. I don't know if you were here yet, but kids had thrown it off an apartment building, thrown it out the window, and it had broken, I think, all 4 of its legs. And they fixed that kitty up, and that kitty got a home. But I mean, you see things like that. That's what really, I think, bugs us more than anything, to see the cruelty. And we've had hoarding situations some years ago with the beagles. 65 beagles in a house. All got homes. A friend of mine has one, and
the 65 beagles story
it's just unbelievable.
Is one that it's too bad people didn't see what was done here for those beagles.
There.
Saved them all, actually.
And they took them. So, but that was just, you just don't understand, what are you doing?
I mean, we had put out requests for food because we needed supplies for all these dogs, and truckloads would come in here, and the staff would stay here unloading trucks, and volunteers as well, myself included, unloading trucks of dog food for these animals. Having to get 65 dogs and trying to teach them to be on their own when they were used to being with others. We tried to walk some of those dogs, and they wouldn't walk by themselves because they were never alone.
They were never even
so
outside.
So we had to have
they
a couple dogs
house.
together before you could get them to walk. And the amount of effort that went for those 65 dogs and the stories behind it, and what the staff did to get every single one of those dogs a home, that was an incredible story all by itself.
I would say, in a word, it's rewarding to volunteer at the Humane Society. I've been doing this for almost about 2 years now, and after I did it the first time, I was pretty hooked the first day. It's sometimes a lot of work, you're spending a lot of time walking around the dogs. I put miles on at a time when I'm doing it, but it's absolutely worth it. I like being able to see the development of the dogs that come through the Humane Society, knowing that they're getting the training that they need and that they deserve, and that ultimately we're helping them get adopted, which is always the goal as soon as the dog comes through the door.
Yeah, we have a lot of good times here at the Humane Society walking dogs. Actually, I can remember the very first dog that I walked. The very first dog, his name was Happy, very appropriately named. The sweetest pit bull you've ever seen. The staff loved her. And she hadn't been adopted for a while, yet she was the sweetest dog to every person that ever came up to her. So Happy was my first walk, and I still remember that dog. She got adopted, she got a good home, and it was a nice event. That was one of those things where, you got to remember the first dog, and you got to walk that first dog and see that first dog get adopted. So you kind of knew you were doing something good.
I mean, years ago, it was like they didn't really want volunteers here. You came in this certain time and that was it. You weren't supposed to be here any other time.
Right.
And I don't think they really wanted
no, and now
volunteers. And now it's
volunteers every day doing everything from, socializing cats and cleaning up after some of the cats and dogs and walking them and going to events. All of that were volunteers all over the place, which is really great for us. And we've made some good friends that way as well from the volunteers that we work with. So it's kind of nice.
So I've been with the organization for almost a decade. That's a long time in animal welfare, and I definitely have memories of some darker days in animal welfare as a whole. There are more resources available today than there were 5-10 years ago that allow us to be able to place animals who we may not have been able to place before. We do TNR services for feral cats, where in the past that wasn't an option for us. The stance has never changed on euthanasia in the shelter. It was something that we never wanted to do. When I first started, because we didn't have the resources available to rehabilitate all of the dogs that were coming into us, and it didn't feel like there was a way out of that. And so that's, without a doubt, the darkest time for me being at the organization. But I don't have any worry that we would ever be back there, because our team works tirelessly to get our animals out and get them into whatever setting would be best for them, whether it be a rescue, hospice, foster home, or an adoption. We have great partnerships with other organizations in the community that we didn't have before. So we're able to transfer animals from our organization when we're at capacity to another organization who may not be at capacity. We have a volunteer coordinator who does an amazing job, and she was able to create partnerships with PetSmart, and now we're able to have cats housed in PetSmart that we can get adopted off-site.
Well, there's always going to be some downfalls when you're running a shelter. There are some animals that just don't make it. Either their health is too far gone, and we can't help them, and that part is always sad. And there's some dogs that, despite all the love and care you give them, just cannot be adopted. And there's a small number, and that number is small, but it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 10 or whatever the number is. The staff and volunteers all are bothered when they see that we can't make it work. Everybody wants to see every animal that comes in get back to that social and be able to be adopted. When that doesn't happen, that we all get bothered by that, and that's because of the passion that not only the volunteers but the staff have for those animals and for what they do. It can be a tough time on those days, and we all have seen those. The good thing is that the good days far outweigh those bad ones. Far outweigh those bad ones. The bad days, they're there, but not as many.
I think what we've done over the last few years is we've been able to look at animal welfare differently. We've been able to, talk about what kind of animal shelter we want to be, what kind of humane society we want to be. So just because things have been done a certain way for the last 50 years in animal welfare doesn't mean that we have to do it that way any longer. So we're no longer euthanizing animals due to space. Part of that is due to the aggressiveness that we tried to find homes for animals by employing 2 full-time adoption specialists, by having a vet on site that spay and neuters our animals so that we don't have to wait for another vet to alter them before they go to an adopted home. So what we look at is how to save lives rather than just hope and keep our fingers crossed that we're going to find that someone's going to come in and adopt an animal. So we're renovating the entire building. One of the newer wing, which was constructed in 1995, was being converted into a community vet clinic with 3 wellness exam rooms, digital X-ray, ultrasound, state-of-the-art surgery center, and the rest of the building is being converted into an adoption center, new enlarged free-roaming cat areas, and then the new construction consists of 80 state-of-the-art dog kennels. This vet clinic will provide community medical care for animals, not just that come into our shelter as stray or abandoned animals, but will also provide high-quality medical services to the public-owned animals as well. So, there's a huge barrier for people to access quality medical care for their pets, just based on the cost concept of it all. So what we've done is we've brought the costs for these people down so that they can afford high quality medical care for their pets. On the other side is the shelter side, and what we want to do there is create state-of-the-art living quarters for animals while they transition from being homeless to their forever homes. So we're creating free roaming cat areas, state-of-the-art dog kennels, so that they're easier to keep clean, so that our animals are more rested, more relaxed, and they can have a better presence while they're in the shelter, so they can present themselves better to potential adopters. So in our clinic, we can do almost anything any other vet clinic can do. We can do spay and neuters, lumpectomies. We can We can do ultrasound and digital x-rays so that we can diagnose issues that might be occurring in animals. And a lot of times when people go to a for-profit vet, with an issue for their animal, they'll get a price back from them and they'll go, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. I don't know how I'll be able to afford that. And what we do is we can work with them on, whatever it is that they can afford for that procedure. Come to the Lehigh County Humane Society Community Vet Clinic, get the procedure done, and not break their bank account at the same time, so that their pet can go home and live in the place where they belong, with the people who love them.
So our veterinary clinic is larger now. So we've been able to increase the number of services that we are able to offer the community. So that will decrease the number of dogs that were coming in as surrenders, because now we're able to treat things that we weren't able to treat before. So whenever we can keep an animal in its home, it's going to reduce our intake numbers.
It's actually having a vet here to be able to look at any animal that comes in the door is huge, and they're all checked out when they come in. But some of the surgeries that Dr. DeCance has done is amazing, that the dog got that surgery here where he would not have, because people like say, well, it's a shelter dog, we'll get some more. That's not the way their attitude is here now. Is when it comes in, what can we do to save it? I mean, every dog that comes in, the horrible story of some years ago, that dog that was beaten up by kids and hit with a hatchet in the head. Sally. That dog probably would have been put down anywhere else. Sally's now living her great life, completely healed, a scar on her head forever, but she is a loving dog. Somehow you go from a dog that probably should hate people to someone who actually went through the surgeries, was taken care of, was treated, retrained, and found out what love was all about, and that dog was adopted and living a great life today. So that's what this whole entire renovation is going to allow us to do more than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm looking forward to the new kennels, just to make life easier to take the dogs in and out. One of the things that we enjoy as volunteers is going in there and seeing the dogs. When we came in every day, we'd go say hello to all of them before we start walking. Now with the construction going on, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to that again, and have the kennels be easier to get in and out of, and hook up the dogs and take them out and walk them. Also with the new exits to take the dogs out through the ramps is always kind of nice.
It's part of getting to know them when you can hook them up and to take them out. You can
to build the trust.
Especially if you didn't ever walk the dog before, you get the idea, well, is the dog, jumping all over the place? Is he calm? Is he too excitable or whatever? You can't see that now. What agitates the dogs a lot, especially dogs that don't like the other dogs, are being able to see each other. And right now, that's what they have. They have just the gating. And with those, they'll be frosted halfway up. They won't be able to see each other, which will be great.
Yeah, the renovations.
They'll be a little calmer.
All of the renovations are going to make a huge difference to what the shelter can do. For us, with the dog walking, the space alone, just having room to get a dog out safely, we want to make sure that two dogs that don't get along never get close. And some of the spaces here today were tight. That's all going to go away, and so you have a lot more room and ease of getting the dogs in and out. One of the things that was mentioned about the new kennels is that they won't see each other and get agitated. Some dogs will just sit there and stare at each other and just get mad at each other because they're staring at them. That will stop. And so, plus there'll be more room for more animals, which is also good. So you can take animals that might be sick and separate them for a while safely without affecting the others. The vet offices is amazing to have that.
This is the biggest thing. I mean, this is why they care.
We still have a little ways to go, but it's going to be so much easier for not only for us to get the animals, but for other people to come see them. And we're hoping that helps settle the dog down who might not necessarily be comfortable in the kennels that we have today, make them feel better so they get adopted easier. The biggest thing I want people to know about the Humane Society that they might not, it is not the Humane Society from 40 years ago or 10 years ago. I've dealt with people who have asked that question, oh, don't go there. No, that's completely wrong. The shelter is an amazing place with people who are dedicated to see the animals get adopted.
So with the new family-friendly environment that we're creating with the colors and the kennels and just the overall design of the shelter, I think that my most memorable moment I'm currently living. So I'm living through this renovation and expansion project that 4 years ago I didn't even think was possible. We've had leadership that had spoken about it, but we didn't see it. And now I get to walk through. I don't think that there's anything that's going to top this moment right now, because this moment is making so much more possible.
I think the most hopeful thing that I can say about what we're doing with our construction is that it's going to bring a whole new way of doing animal welfare into the valley for the next 100 years. It's really going to change how families can come in, look for their next best friend, the feeling that they'll have when they walk in through our door with all the natural sunlight and the welcome center, the way our animals are cared for, how they're living, how they're interacting with the public. And I think when people go to other communities and see their animal shelters there, they're going to look back on the Lehigh Valley with a great deal of pride and say, you know what, we're doing animal welfare better than anybody. You should come to Allentown and see what our Humane Society is doing.